Alright guys, welcome to a new video. In the beginning clip you saw that this quad smoked a ton. This is a Honda 400EX. I'm not sure in the year. The VIN is kind of hard to see. I can't really tell what the VIN says. And then the sticker right here, it's missing the date. So I'm not really sure what year this thing is. I'm guessing early 2000s. But yeah, it's a nice quad. It's got nice beefy tires on it, Sun F tires, a couple aftermarket parts like the bumper, the Nerf bars. I think the lights are aftermarket. Probably a new seat cover on it. Looks pretty nice. What else does this thing have on it? Looks like an aftermarket gas cap. It's got different bars on it. So a couple different aftermarket parts. Shout out to the Seaboys YouTube channel. Their sticker was on the quad. Pretty cool. Basically, this quad smokes a ton. We're going to try to diagnose the problem today. It's probably going to either be the piston rings, which are like really worn, or the piston itself, or the valve seals. Usually those are the culprits of a Smokey 400EX. People have problems with the smoking on these 400EXs all the time. It's a super common problem, along with the ticking in the top end of the engine. You can see there's some oil residue coming from the head. You can see it's a little bit wet. Right here it's wet, and right here it's wet. So I'm guessing it's leaking oil from one of the gaskets. And you can see it's wet down here as well. You can see kind of oily substance there. So I'm guessing it's either got a blown gasket leaking, probably the head gasket. Looks like the valve cover gasket's leaking right here. I don't know if there's silicone up there or a gasket. There should be a gasket on the 400EX, and then potentially an exhaust leak as well happening from the header part of the pipe. There's an exhaust leak back here as well. You guys probably saw it in the video. It's puffing out through the pipe, and I think that's pretty much it. It looks like there's oil on the bottom of the engine as well, so my guess is that oil is coming down from the head, going down and traveling down, making it look like there's a leak by the oil plug, when in reality it's probably from the top of the engine, because you can see it starts all the way back here and it's all wet back there. So there's definitely something going on with it. I also found that the one-way bearing on this thing for the starter clutch is pretty much junk. You can hear it spin sometimes and then sometimes catch. So that probably needs to be replaced as well. It's fine for now, but it definitely should be replaced before it causes more damage. But yeah, one-way bearings are pretty cheap. I think they're like 35 bucks for a new one-way bearing. That takes care of it. We'll probably go through that process at some point in the video as well. But today we're going to try to figure out what's going on with this thing, why it smokes. So we're going to be taking apart the whole quad, the top end, the head, the valves, the piston. Everything's coming off of it, and then we'll probably end up replacing everything on it depending on how bad everything looks. I did hear a slight tick as well on the top end, so I'm guessing timing chain might be a little bit loose. We will see. But yeah, let's start digging into it. Let's get right into it. We're going to take off the plastics and then get right to the good part, the engine. Get this plastics off here. Alright, now we've got access to the top of the valve cover here. Take out the spark plug. Lots of dirt was in there. Put that up here. So these bolts right here are very easy to break off. So we'll have to be careful taking those off, but I'm guessing some of them are going to break. But we'll get this off. This is a bracket for the engine, so an engine mount. This whole thing comes out. So we'll take that off next, and then we'll get to the valve cover off and look at those. So this one's longer than this one. So when you put it back together, it can only go one way. Alright, we're going to take these valve caps off and check the valve clearances first, just to see if they were in spec before we disassemble this. So we gotta go to the front of the engine here and make sure it's at top dead center over here. So we gotta get these two guys out of here, this cover right here and that cover right there. Alright, let's see if we can get these caps off of here. Ooh, that one's on there. Oh. That one's on there pretty good. That hasn't been off in a while. Alright. Oh. That sucker's on there. Alright, we are at top dead center right here. If we look, we can see the T lined up with the notch. So we'll come up here, get these valve caps off, and check the valve clearances. You can see all the wetness right here, all going down. It looks like this is actually cracked right here. That mount is cracked. You can see right here, there's a big crack in it. And there's a crack down here as well. I wonder if the whole thing is cracked. Could very well be cracked. I wonder. That could be the problem right there. I don't know if it goes all the way through, but we'll get these valve caps off first. They're sometimes tough to get off. Valves feel like they might be a little tight. This one's tight right here. There's no play in there. So the right side exhaust is tight. That needs to have a little bit more clearance. That one's a little bit tight. And that one's tight, not moving at all. This exhaust one's fine right here. There's a little play in there. But yeah, these are all tight. So that's probably why it was backfiring a little bit. Because when these are tight, the valves don't close all the way. So compression is released and then it shoots out the carburetor and it causes that backfire. So yeah, that's one of the problems we found. So valves were tight. 3 of the 4 valves were tight. Put these caps back on for now. So we know that the valves were tight. we're going to take off this cover next. See what that looks like underneath there. All right, on to the hardest part, getting this valve cover off without breaking the bolts. Hopefully I warmed it up enough to where it's hot and they won't break, but these are all 8 millimeters. Let's try the outside. That one came. That one was easy. That one was already loose. These are really loose actually. Could be why it was leaking. That one was loose. Yeah, these are all not torqued down at all. So far, every single one was loose. I mean, that one wasn't too loose. That one was loose. The back ones were tight, and that's probably why there's no oil residue left over back there, because that gasket's actually getting crimped down. That one wasn't too bad. I think we're all loose now. You don't want to take these off with an impact because it'll just snap them right off. But once you get them loose, you can take an impact and zip them right off. I think that's a 12 mil. That's a 12 millimeter. And they're all different sizes, so be aware of that when you take them out. Or a lot of oil. All right. Rockers look good. No wear on the rockers or gouges or anything, so that's good. It's a good sign. They move freely, aren't locked up. No like super shiny metal pieces on it where you could see it's wearing more than the other one. So those all look pretty good. We're gonna inspect this later for a crack. I suspect there might be a crack in here somewhere because oil was leaking out of it, and there's a crack. Really bad one right here, you can see. That crack in there. And it goes all the way to the back. See if the valves push down. That one pushes down. Sometimes if a valve can't be pushed down, it's either bent or stuck. That's pushing down. They all push down, so I don't think they're bent, and they all look like they're coming up the same amount. So far so good. We'll check the timing next, make sure that's spot on. All right, we've got the quad at top dead center. We're gonna check the timing. So the first thing you wanna look for is the lobes. These are the lobes right here. These are gonna be pointing down. If they're pointing up, you've got something wrong. And then you wanna check the sprocket out right here. Kind of zoom in. So on the sprocket, you can see the line right there and right there. You can see it's parallel to the surface of the head. That one and that one. So the timing's pretty much spot on. So that was not a real issue there. We're going to get the tensioner off, the pipe off next, and then the carburetor off. But I was going to check out the cam chain, see if that's tight or not, because I did hear a little rattle going on in there. So the cam chain's a little bit loose. It could be tightened up a little bit, but it's not too bad. That's probably the ticking we heard. You can see there's, it's really not bad. That's probably fine. I mean, there's a little bit of slop in there, but Nothing crazy. I'd run it like that. That's fine. So timing chain looks good. Everything looks good so far. Cam looks pretty good. I don't see anything wrong with the cam yet. The lobes look round and nice. No, there's not a ton of wear on the cam. We'll have to check the bearings once we get it out, but everything looks good so far. All right, now that we got the header pipe that was right here off, we can get to the chain tensioner a lot easier. This one is the stock one on the Hondas. A lot of times these fail because the spring mechanism in there wears out after time, and then it gets less tension, so then it doesn't hold that chain tight enough. So I recommend replacing it with a manual one, if you can. Whew, those suckers were on there. Alright, that tensioner comes out like that. And that's still holding tension, so that's good. That's what that looks like. And then to get that to go in, you take off this little screw at the top of it and you twist it, and that'll retract back in. So then you can put it back in. Our cam chain should be loose up here. Just see. Yep. So that'll come off easy. Alright, let's get this cam out of here. Chain should be loose enough just to pick that right up. Careful not to drop the bearings in. Got one bearing over here. Alright, we got the cam out. These bearings feel really smooth on the ends, so those are good. Cam lobes look smooth, no imperfections on those, so we're all good here. Alright, to get the head off, we gotta get the carburetor off. Let's take that off of here. I like to place the carburetor just back here for the time being. Alright, now we gotta get these bolts off right here, and then the whole head can come off. I don't think those were torqued down correctly. Weren't very hard to get off. Those should be extremely hard to get off. Gotta be careful with this inside one right here. There's a washer underneath it, and it's like really easy to lose that. Alright, everything is off of it. Let's get the head off next. Should just lift right up. There we go. Smells like burnt oil underneath there. Let's see what that piston looks like. And I use these alligator clips for the cam chain. Easy to get off. Piston looks pretty good. So far it looks good. Put these back on. You can see the piston is in correctly. Got the gasket right here. I think this is the one that failed. I'll I'll show you guys a closer up picture of this. So we're looking at the piston right here. You can see the oil built up right here and right along the edge right here. It looks like the gasket failed along those edges and oil was seeping past, which oil shouldn't even be in here. So it was leaking something through there, and that could be why it was smoking. So this quad was getting low on power when you were trying to do wheelies and stuff like that too, so it could be the rings as well. We'll have to take a look after we get the cylinder off, and we'll check out the ring spec and all that fun stuff. But so far the piston looks really good. No issues I see with it. We'll take a look at the head next. Alright, so we'll flip this around, see what's going on down here. Something came out. Oh, washer. So you can see it's pretty carboned up down here. Lots of carbon on these. Doesn't look like we've got a bent valve or anything, and none of them are stuck open. So looks pretty good, but you can see how carboned up. Look at that spark plug. Thing is just packed with carbon. So oil was definitely getting through here. So it's kind of pointing towards rings, I think. Or it could be valve seals as well. You don't know until you take off that cylinder. But yeah, it doesn't look too bad. It's not all chewed up or anything. And these will clean up on a wire brush. Not a big deal. Alright, another quick thing I want to go over on the head is this little decompression valve spring. So you can see this comes out. So a lot of people lose this little pin. This goes right in there, and there's a spring underneath it. That's for the decompression release to work. If you don't have that pin in there, this probably won't run the best, if run at all. So a lot of people lose that. They flip over the head looking at the valves, and that little pin gets lost. It pops right out, and then they forget to put it back in, and it causes all sorts of problems. So just beware when you're taking this thing apart. There is that little pin in there. Alright, there's 4 big bolts holding down the cylinder with washers like that. Bolts right here. Don't forget about those before you try to take it off. These strip out pretty easily too, so be careful with these. Alright, let's see if we can get this cylinder off now. A couple taps with the rubber mallet here. She's on there pretty good. All right, finally it budged. Let's see here. There we go. A little bit more. I think she's free now. All right. Cylinder is off. Let's inspect the cylinder and then we'll inspect the piston. All right, so looking at the piston, it looks like all the rings are intact. Doesn't look too bad. We won't know until we measure the ring gap, but they look pretty good. Everything's loose. They're not stuck to the piston or anything, so oil ring looks good. Piston looks good, no scratches or anything on it. Crank felt good, only a little bit of side to side play, no up and down play. So that all checks out. Let's go over to the cylinder over here. I haven't checked this one out yet. Let's see here. Any scratches? There is a little scratch in there actually. There's one deeper, well, a couple deeper gouges on it. Those will probably come off with the hone, but there's a scratch right there. You guys can see it. Right along that edge. Right where my fingernail can catch it. It's like a little divot. And this is towards the front of the bike. So where the exhaust is. So we'll look on the piston and see if anything would have scored that. There is a little damage to the piston right there. I'll go to the other side. There's like a little piece of metal, like a very small amount, but right there, I can feel that with my fingernail. So a little bit of aluminum off of there, but I mean that's not horrible. So probably just gonna throw in a new piston and rings since the piston has some damage. We'll have to measure the bore and the piston rings, but nothing looks too bad. At least the crank's good. That was the main concern, because I heard that little ticking, but crank is good. Piston looks decent, and the cylinder has a couple small gouges. Let's get the piston off and measure that ring gap quick. Alright guys, here's a closer look at the piston and check it out. You can see the gouges right there. You can see fingernail catches it, and then check this out. I didn't even see this before because it was hidden when it's on the bike. A little chip out of the piston right there. So that could be the culprit. I bet you that little piece, or some of these pieces got caught in there and we're sliding up and down. You can see the little piece, the little chunk out of there. And the ring actually broke. So part of the ring is gone. So that's probably why I was smoking so much. Probably didn't help. But yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. So that would make sense. A little piece chipped off, scratched down the end of the piston, and unfortunately the cylinder is scored as well. But hopefully we can fix that with the hone, because they're not very deep, just like these. They're just probably 0.5 millimeter deep. But worst comes to worst, we'll buy a new cylinder for it. Alright, we've got the rings off of here. Let's check the ring gap here quick. See what they look like. We'll just do this by eye if they're close. That's a pretty big gap, actually. We'll measure that and see what that's at, but that's pretty big. Alright, measuring the bore of the piston, we got 84.84. And then you want to go from the bottom, actually. From the bottom. So 84.86. And the stock piston is 85 millimeters. So this is still on the stock bore, I believe. We're at the exact same thing. So we're right at 85. So we're still on the stock bore. Alright, just looked up the stock factory Honda piston ring gap, and it looks like it says it is, the top ring is 0.008 to 0.014 inches. The second ring is 0.014 to 0.020. And oil side rail is 0.008 to 0.028. So we're at the top ring right now, and I'm at the highest level in my feeler gauge, and it goes right through that ring gap, like no problem. So we're supposed to be way down here, 0.008 right here. Look how much room is between there and that ring gap. You could fit 2 of them in there. Ring gap for the first ring is way too big. Alright, ring gap for the second ring is a little bit smaller, but still too big, and that was still fitting the 0.024 gauge in there. So both rings were way too big. I'm not going to even check the oil ring because I'm assuming that's big as well. So definitely needs new rings and a new piston and valve seals, because while you're doing the new piston and rings, you may as well do the valve seals as well. So all the valves need to come out, springs need to come off, valves need to be cleaned up. You can see all the carbon buildup on them, and then new valve seals replaced with new rings, piston, and I don't know if we need a new cylinder or not, depending on if that hone takes out those gouges. So that's the plan. We're going to order up some new parts, install it, and hopefully that gets rid of the horrible smoking problem. Stay tuned for next video. We'll get this thing back up and running and see if it still smokes. Hopefully it won't. Hopefully everything will be fixed, and hopefully we'll increase the power and longevity of the machine. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Stay tuned for next video, and until next time, we are out.